you think of when you hear the word agriculture? Maybe you picture a small family farm passed down through the generations. Or maybe you see the logo of a huge corporation in your mind, its farmland spread over hundreds of acres. Or maybe you imagine the lessons of ag teachers in classrooms across the country, working to educate and empower the farmers of tomorrow. And what about the scientists, working to create better and safer ways of growing food? Or the truck drivers, the ship captains, and the pilots, transporting our food across the world? Through this exercise, you can see that your vision of agriculture will change based on your association with it. And without each one of these people, our global view of agriculture would be incomplete. In the climate of international trade that we live in today, you can bet that people all over the world contribute to the food you eat. And that same system can be used to help those less fortunate, providing resources to developing countries. Henry Ford once said, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success." As we look back on the history of agriculture, we can see that this is evident. Agriculture developed independently in many distinct parts of the world, creating the variations in culture that we see today. However, many facets of these early farming communities were similar. The agricultural practices of a village were heavily reliant upon nature and the earth. The farms around a village sustained all the people there, and a bad year could wipe out the entire population. This begins to change as we see the rise of empires such as Rome. As the Romans spread across Europe and the Middle East, they adopted the farming practices of the people they conquered. This was the first time that many agricultural communities had an outside influence. As people were introduced to new ways of growing food, they refined their systems. Food and equipment were also easily transferred across the empire, leading to an increase in the efficiency of farming. In Europe, with the rise of the feudal system, farms began to feed people outside of the villages they were based in. This period also saw significant technological advances. For the first time, feudal landowners were interested in growing a lot of food, rather than simply producing enough to stay alive. These innovations provided for a new way of farming, one that maximized crop yield and valued the easy transportation of goods. However, farming as we know it today began in the 18th century, with what is referred to as the British Agricultural Revolution. People moved away from farms and into cities, creating machines that improved the quality of life and in turn made farming easier and safer. This revolution also created a tighter-knit global economy. With the invention of trains, cars, and steam-powered ships, it no longer took months upon months to transport goods across the world. Ideas, medicine, and food circulated our world, helping the people who needed them. Global agriculture, as we know it today, was finally possible. We now know how humanity came together, but keeping together proved to be challenging. Since the dawn of agriculture, food has been used as a means of bartering, trading, and even buying other commodities. However, in today's global climate, this is at an all-time high. We see countries going to war, invading, even demolishing other nations to get the resources they need. One prime example of this is with the war between Ukraine and Russia. There are many different ways to look at this war, but today we're going to view it through an agricultural lens. Ukraine is one of the biggest countries in Europe, using over half its land for agricultural purposes. Ukraine is also a major producer and exporter of small grains like corn, barley, and wheat, producing the feed for the pigs and poultry of Europe. As of right now, Russia only controls about 18% of the country. However, the fighting is mostly taking place in the southeastern part of the country, which is their prime farming land. This disrupts food chain supplies all over the world. Higher income nations might be able to mitigate this by switching providers or tapping into reserves, but middle and lower income countries do not have this option. We live in a world today where almost no nation produces everything they need agricultural-wise. Corn might be grown in Ukraine, made into feed in Europe, shipped to America to feed cows in the Midwest, who are then killed and shipped to China as beef. At each step in this process, economies are growing, jobs are being created, and the agricultural community is winning. When one part of the cycle is disrupted, like with the war in Ukraine, the entire system is thrown off, resulting in global consequences. As we can see in this example, the ability of individual nations to regulate their own economy has been greatly reduced by the emergence of global trade. This can have both positive and negative impacts. As we see with Ukraine and the countries it feeds, we have little to no say over what happens in other countries. Events beyond our collective control can completely devastate the economies of third world countries. However, there is another side to the story. A connected and interdependent global climate can be used to ease food security crises just as easily as it can create them. And, luckily for us, agriculture might be exactly the catalyst we need to begin working together. According to the World Bank, agriculture is one of the most powerful tools to end extreme poverty, boost shared prosperity, and feed a projected 10 billion people by 2050. Now, those are pretty words, but you might be wondering, how do you begin something as big as feeding 10 billion people? Well, we can start by looking at the food that we, as Americans, throw away every day. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has found that about 40% of our food supply is wasted every year. That is equal to about 150,000 tons of food each day, or about 1 pound per person per day. Now, don't worry, I'm not accusing you of throwing away a pound of perfectly good food each day. But think about that banana you picked over at the supermarket because it had too many brown spots. Or those strawberries you decided not to get because they're not in season anymore and they looked a little mushy. Or that vegetable that was a little misshapen but otherwise perfectly fine. All of these little things add up, leading to a lot of food being discarded. That food could be exported or used in the form of food donations to other countries. The United States Agency for International Development reports that for every $1 billion in U.S. agricultural exports, over 8,000 full-time jobs for American workers are created. They also state that agricultural growth is directly related to expanding exports in developing countries. This means that as we expand our agricultural exports, the economy is growing, providing more jobs for Americans. America is also the largest donor of international food assistance. In the past 60 years, over 150 countries have benefited from U.S. food assistance programs. This includes food given in a state of crisis, like after a hurricane, or food given over a number of years, like with some countries in Africa. Without our interconnected climate, this assistance would not be possible. Coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. This quote by Henry Ford is more true than we may realize, especially when it comes to agriculture. Just as it did in the past, agriculture shapes the way our world functions. However, today it has global implications. Agriculture shapes trade deals, wars, the economy, and even a country's independence. Today, we looked at how we came together, how agriculture provided the catalyst for a global economy. Then we moved on to present day, and how keeping together is proving to be a challenging task. Finally, we look to the future. A future that is only possible by working together. The thing we must remember is this: agriculture is a global effort, and this is amazing. Our global network provides us with opportunities never seen before, to provide for those less fortunate, to spread our resources more evenly, and to promote a brighter future for the entire world. Thank you.
Elizabeth, congratulations to making it to this point. First question for you, can you talk to us about how you came to select this topic for your speech?
Well, this is something that I am very passionate about, especially the part about using our resources to help others. I have always been very passionate about reaching underprivileged peoples in both the outside world and in Callaway County. So I'm from Callaway County, if you did not know that already. And one thing that my school always does is in the summer, they have this program where people can stop by anytime and get a free meal. And the first time I heard about that, I was in elementary school. I was like, that's so cool. But it also never occurred to me that we had food insecurity in Callaway County. And so just my entire life, I've been struck by that idea that like people I live with, people I go to school with, they might not know where their next meal is coming from. And in my household, we always have extras. And then I was thinking as America as a whole, like America, like I said, we throw away about 40% of our food supply every year. And that food could be used to help people in Africa, but also in Kentucky and in Callaway County. And I think it's important just to get that word out and let other people know that that is happening and we can help solve it.
What steps would you take to help with food waste in your community?
Well, one thing that I really enjoy is going to my local farmers market every Saturday. I remember the first time that my mom and I went this past summer, she said, yes, you know they always have the best things because they pick it as soon as they're ripe. And that got me thinking, in the grocery store, we see things with a lot of preservatives on it. We see things that might have been picked a month ago, and they're sort of starting to get mushy, like I said in my speech. And so I think that is one thing a lot of people can do is promote small town farmers, because one, you know you're getting the best quality things. You're getting things with not a lot of preservatives on them, and you know you're getting things that are ripe and they're ready to be picked. But also just helps with a lot of food waste in our counties and in our state. So I think that's one thing that I would recommend to people is go with some small town farmers and try to get like the best produce for yourself, but also support these people in your community.
Do you think that the local schools and your local community look to the bigger world when they think about agriculture and the reach that your local community agriculture has beyond Callaway County then?
Yes, I definitely think that is an amazing thing for them to do. And everything starts local, but then it can expand into Kentucky and then the United States and hopefully the world. And as we see things like my local farmers market, that is an idea that is pretty common across all of Kentucky and I believe all of America. And as we see people doing these local things to impact change and to help others, hopefully that will spread to the state and then the country. I think that also in bigger cities like Lexington, if they have a farmers market, they have more change that they can impact and create because they have a bigger reach. My city is pretty mid-sized, but the things that we are doing in our city can also be implemented in Lexington and Louisville, and then maybe implemented statewide, and then hopefully eventually countrywide to help those who need it and reach people who need it. Thank you so much.
All right, let's give a round of applause to our first speaker, Elizabeth Lanier from Callaway County.
Ready? Okay. Take a moment and reflect on some recent news headlines you've seen about agriculture. Did they portray it positively as the industry that feeds us all? Or were they packed with stereotypes and misconceptions? In today's world, it's not hard to find someone who uses stereotypes against farmers. Rather than being seen as the most healthy, the most useful, and the most noble employment of man, as George Washington famously stated, today, farmers are stereotyped as unintelligent and unworthy of respect, simply for choosing to live as stewards to the land and animals. These stereotypes have grown with time, and today our country is seeing a drastic and ever-increasing gap between producers and consumers. Having grown up on a commercial beef operation, agriculture was, and still is, my whole world. Young and naive as I once was, I didn't understand that not everyone sees beauty in agriculture the way I do. However, when I got into high school and began to get out in the world, I found that so many people know so little about where their food comes from. The truth is, the general public is more disconnected from agriculture than they have ever been. According to the American Farm Bureau, most consumers are 3 generations removed from the farm. When consumers haven't seen or been taught the truth about how the agriculture industry really works, they become subject to the popular opinion that circulates throughout our culture. Currently, that opinion is anti-agriculture. My name is Addison Thompson, and I am proudly representing the Montgomery County FFA chapter, and I believe the best way to counteract the public's growing disregard for our industry is through ag education. Today, we will dive into why there is a growing need for ag education, where it can be found, how it can hinder further disconnection in the public, and the ways agriculturists can do our parts. First, we need to explore why there is a growing need for ag education. Why should we care if people aren't interested anymore? Our population is continuing to grow and expand, meaning we need more people than ever to contribute to feeding it. According to the United Nations, our population is expected to reach 9.8 billion by 2050. Rather than people taking up careers in agriculture to support our growing population, they are becoming less and less involved. And now, according to the USDA's most recent data, the average age of the American farmer is 57. These farmers are in the latter halves of their lives, and when they sadly pass on, their knowledge will go with them. It is absolutely crucial that younger generations get involved as soon as possible before we lose the people who have fed our country for generations, along with their precious knowledge. The American Farm Bureau says farm and ranch families comprise less than 2% of the U.S. population. The 2% that currently works to feed us all does so valiantly, but they won't be able to support a population that is billions of people larger than it is now. We need to protect our ability to sustain ourselves independently as a country. If more people don't get involved, we risk not being able to comfortably rely on ourselves to feed us and sustain our needs. Next, if education is to be the way we bridge the gap between agriculture and the general public, people need to know where to find it. Ag education can take place through schools and youth organizations. Vocational agriculture was introduced to schools with the 1917 passage of the Smith-Hughes Act and was spurred forward by the 1928 establishment of FFA. Not only can students have in-class instruction on a wide range of agricultural subjects, if they so choose, FFA will allow them to enhance their knowledge through career and leadership development events. FFA also encourages students to have an agriculture project outside of school, known as their supervised agriculture experience. So, not only does FFA provide students with knowledge of the subject, it introduces them to the career and leadership opportunities embedded within it. Another large youth organization related to agriculture is 4-H. 4-H allows youth to be involved in different agricultural clubs in their community, including livestock club, saddle club, shooting sports, and more. And it exposes students to ag education directly from their state's land-grant university's extension service. These organizations allow our country's youth to enter the adult world as educated and well-rounded consumers. However, you may be asking, what is available for the adults who are disconnected from agriculture? Are they simply a lost cause? There are multiple ag literacy sources that allow adults to educate themselves on the workings of the industry. Farm Bureau and the National Cattlemen's Association are just two of many examples of entities that provide news about what is going on in the agriculture industry, and anyone who has questions or curiosities can simply go to their websites and find a topic to explore. It is also important that we understand how ag education plays a role in fixing the issue at hand. As I previously mentioned, many people are no longer interested in agriculture. So we need to find a way to show people what they're missing out on. People need to understand that there is a place for everyone in this industry. You don't have to spend your days in the pasture or on a tractor to belong. You can go into research if you love science, ag communications if you love sharing information, ag business if you love business and economics, veterinary medicine if you love health sciences, of course, education if you love teaching, and so much more. Ag education needs to show people that agriculture is not what its stereotypes make it seem. It is not a harsh and unsophisticated industry, but people won't know this until they're exposed. People need to learn how the crops and livestock that end up on their plates are produced, and this can be done through classroom instruction or hands-on learning. People getting out on the farm and trying for themselves the practices that are employed in order to produce their food provides them with the education they need to make informed decisions as a consumer. When people are exposed to the production of their food, they will be able to distinguish between the misconceptions that spread about our industry and the truth. Finally, how can devoted agriculturists like myself do our part to help educate people who weren't reached through schools or organizations? Recently, the term advocate has been frequently used within the agriculture community. It simply combines the words agriculture and advocate. Social media is a great opportunity for us to advocate. Making posts and chatting online is a great way to come across people who are uneducated and never learned about agriculture through a classroom or a club. Advocating is a big part of educating people about agriculture. In conclusion, it is imperative that people like me, those of us who are proud to be a part of the agriculture industry, do our part to encourage everyone else to explore the endless opportunities our industry offers. Whether it be in the classroom, behind a desk, on the farm, or even in daily conversation, I implore you to use your voice to educate people about the industry that feeds us all. I believe it is our duty to counteract the increasing negativity and stereotypes that are spread about agriculture, and I, for one, feel empowered to do so and hope you do as well. I hope you feel empowered to advocate. Thank you.
Congratulations, Addison, for making it to this point. Quick question for you. Talk to us about how you settled on this topic, or how you got to the point to select this topic for your speech.
I settled on this topic because if you were to take a look into my brain, exactly what I just said to you is what you would find. This is what I spend my time thinking about, this is what is important to me, and this is what matters to me. I want to devote my life to advocating for agriculture and to being agriculture's biggest supporter. And when I was told that I could do a speech or I could choose the topic, of course I was going to choose advocating for agriculture. I talk about that to my friends, my family, my teachers. Anyone that knows me knows I love agriculture and I care about it. And if there is one thing that I'm willing to spend 8 minutes talking about, it's advocating for agriculture and why agriculture is important to us.
Tell us about your favorite time that you've advocated to somebody.
My favorite time that I've advocated to somebody would be when I was employed at Two Sisters Pumpkin Patch, and I worked in the animal barn, taking care of the animals and showing people everything. So one day Temple Grandin came, and they had an event there where Temple Grandin was there, and I brought our little Highland calf named Juby up, and I got to show her to Temple, and people came and were asking questions about her. Schools were there. Students were asking questions about her horns and what they were made of. Little kids were asking me about her horns. They were asking me about her hair. They asked me all about this little calf, and I got to sit and look at them and tell them about her and show them a part of agriculture that they may not have been able to see before. And I got to do all this while Temple Grandin was in my presence, so that was a pretty cool gift if you ask me. So that would be my favorite time that I've gotten to advocate for agriculture, because I got to do it alongside one of my personal heroes, and I got to do it to a lot of young people, which is what's most important to me.
Knowing that people can look things up and find YouTube videos and find information online, how do you help steer individuals towards truthful, undoctored, videos of either pro or con agriculture? How is the best way to kind of steer people to, good factual information?
I think the best way to do that is for us as agriculturists to share the appropriate things for people to look at. For example, the Discover Ag podcast by Natalie Kovarik and Tara Vanderdussen is an excellent way for people to see myths being debunked and for people to see current news about agriculture. And so, for me, I like to share about that, interact with their posts. That's what my family does as well. I think it's important to show people this is what's good to look at. And I think it's also important for people to connect with agriculturists in person, because if someone's talking to me, I can tell them what they should look up. I can tell them some facts myself, and I can say, hey, here's a website that you might be really interested in. Here's something that may be really beneficial to you. And I think it's important for us as agriculturists to take on the responsibility of steering people in the right direction and encouraging the good things and discouraging the bad things. Thank you.
Swaddling a newborn baby in a warm cloth. Watching a young girl paint her nails for the first time, exhilarated to show her friends at school how cool she is tomorrow. A teenager starting his first business mowing lawns in the summer, and the multi-generational family dinner. All of these moments have something in common. They are heartwarming. But another similarity they have that goes unseen is all of these moments in one way or another stem from agriculture. Agriculture is an extremely misunderstood industry with assumptions made for misinformed people. For example, farming is the leading cause of climate change. Only elderly men farm in rural communities, and GMOs are a danger to humans, are all ideas believed across the world. If these stigmatized views of agriculture are not changed, the creation of these memories will come to a steep halt, and life itself as well. You may be wondering how life could end from this widespread disinformation. If the amount of farmers and interest in agriculture continues to decline, we will have nothing, we will be nothing. Everything we eat, use, and have comes from agriculture. That warm cloth from cotton grown in the South. That nail polish from fish scales from an aquaculture farm, most likely in the North. That teenager starting his business, agricultural services and mechanics. And that multi-generational dinner, food directly from the farm and greenhouse. The truth is, farmers sequester all and then some of the carbon dioxide they produce. Men and women of all backgrounds farm rurally, in urban communities, and technologically, and GMOs actually aren't harmful. Farmers have been genetically modifying and breeding to grow the ideal crop for decades. And before it gained media attention, the public didn't fear it. But these are just three of the magnitude of misjudgments from people outside the industry. Now, this problem didn't just come about overnight. It's taken years for it to arise. And the leading cause of the problem is the media. The last 2 decades have been an epicenter for media outreach. News media continues to grow amongst the ever-rising political divide in America, and the amount of social media users increased from 970 million people in 2010 to 4.48 billion people in 2021, and has only grown since, according to Brian Dean from Backlinko. This creates the perfect place for organizations like PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and PAN, Pesticide Action Network, to spread their beliefs that harm our industry. Oftentimes, these news stories are wrong or fail to include the pure full story. The green pieces of paper that can't be made without agriculture are also a root for this dilemma. Money from political party donations, organizations like the groups I just listed, and personal interest funds are funneled to media outlets and lobbyists to advocate for specific topics. The majority of news and lobbying centered around agriculture is unfavorable towards our industry. Together with the media and an influx of more money, people are led to believe these ideas about our lifestyle, which leaves us working endlessly to solve this problem and feed the world. The circulation of disinformation creates the idea that agriculture is an industry undesirable to work in, leaving our work underemployed and farmers overworked. Around 2.6 million Americans are farmers, according to Business Insider, meaning 2.6 million Americans are feeding 331 million others. While this currently manages to meet the requirements of sustainable agriculture, it will not be long before our industry starts to fail due to a growing lack of interest. And this leads me to my next point. Not all agriculturalists are farmers. There are scientists, businessmen and women, researchers, technicians, vets, salespeople, engineers, politicians, and so much more. Since there is a growing lack of interest, people need to be paid more to come into an agricultural job, and this is not easy to do. Exponentially rising pay rates put an unbeatable burden onto our employers, especially family-owned businesses and farms. However, when we do get food from farms or greenhouses to tables and shelves, it often goes unsold or uneaten because of the fear instilled into society that GMOs are a danger to human life. There are only 11 crops sold in the U.S. that have GMOs in them, and according to the FDA, research has shown no side effect. Either way, it's a lose-lose situation for us unless we take action now. We've learned from history what happens when we don't take action. In 1958, China launched a program called the Great Leap Forward, with a goal of completely modernizing Chinese agriculture due to the belief that traditional agriculture was not stable for their economy and environment. This policy left their agrarian workforce and economy bare, causing the starvation and death of millions. We must take action now and secure a better future for us, a better future for agriculture, and a better future for the world. The fact that chocolate milk does not come from brown cows can be confusing, but the solution to our problem isn't. We must fight fire with fire, an age-old tactic. We as agriculturalists need to use these same weapons our opposers do, social media. Create platforms to spread the truth, share our message, and achieve the goal of educating people. One of the greatest benefits of social media usage for us is the disproportionate amount of young people on it. If we can make them firm believers in the future of agriculture, we will have set a strong beginning because they will inevitably become the next leaders of the world. We could partner with organizations like Kentucky Farm Bureau, Raising Hope, or the USDA to launch social media campaigns. These campaigns could have interactive posts that educate the viewers about this industry and how it affects them every day. Another rising star in the realm of agriculture that could be used as a solution to this injustice is agritourism. The University of Kentucky defines agritourism as visiting a working farm or agribusiness operation for enjoyment. A great example of this is Reed's Orchard in Davis County. It's an orchard and people go there for events, to pick apples and other fruits, make apple slushies, and enjoy a farm setting that otherwise would not be accessible to most. The best thing about agritourism is, yes, you are selling a product, but you're also selling an experience. A good experience is priceless and can in turn cultivate the appreciation of agriculture. Things like these blue jackets are another solution. Every single time I and others put this blue corduroy on, we are afforded the opportunity to inspire change. The students who went through ag pathways or had a blue jacket themselves are the future of agriculture, and if we can't continue to improve our system, there won't be one to fight for eventually. Which is why I believe we should rally for movements and organize events in the community to start programs in primary schools for agriculture education. According to the United Nations Children Fund, primary education is the bedrock of development. This means we set a head start for our children, equipping them with foundational life skills. We could also lobby our governments, their treasurer, in support of us. Do the simple things like click share on that Instagram post and encourage everyone we can to sign up for that Intro to Ag class and pursue a career in agriculture. So no, farmers don't cause soil erosion, cows don't cause global warming, agriculture does not waste our water supply, our food is safe to eat, we actually do care about the well-being of our animals, GMOs don't give you extra arms, and chocolate milk does not come from brown cows. While some of these misconceptions seem harmless, they all feed into the social stigma surrounding agriculture. So I would like to present this question. Will we be the people of the past that stand for nothing or negate the opportunity to correct someone about agriculture because we fear judgment? Or will we be the generation that secures a future for agriculture and truly can stand solid for our part in that inspiring task? Thank you.
Jacob, congratulations making it to this point. Talk to us about how you got to pick this topic and set on this topic for your speech.
Yeah, of course. I think the largest reason that I decided to make this my topic was whenever I was working with the Davis County Junior Soil Board, and we were at a middle school ag day, and we were kind of educating the students about agriculture, and a student looked at me and said, agriculture isn't good for our environment. And being able to talk to those kids and show them how this industry impacts them and how this industry actually sustains our environment was so fulfilling. I felt a sense of purpose being able to provide that information to the people and students in the middle schools and elementary schools. I think that they are the future of agriculture, and like I mentioned in my speech, starting those programs in the earlier stages of school is so important, and I think that's really what it stemmed from, being able to leave those schools fulfilled knowing that I have a purpose and I was able to provide them with valuable information.
You talked about influencers online. Tell us about your favorite influencer and how they effectively educate their audience.
My favorite influencer online, specifically around agriculture and FFA, is a program called My FFA Experience. I've actually applied to be in that program, and unfortunately that didn't go too well, but there's always next year. But they have an Instagram, a Facebook, and a TikTok. And TikTok is one of the more important things. And they kind of share what this organization is, what agriculture is, and what our mission is in a modern way through TikTok. And I think that's where a lot of our platform a lot of our children are on, a lot of FFA members are on that, and I think that's where a lot of the stereotypes stem from is TikTok as well. So he's really fighting fire with fire, this program is, and they're sharing that information in a modern way where most of the young people are on is TikTok, and it's not a diagram or a spreadsheet or something like that. It's in a modern way, you know, with music from today and dance moves and things like that, and it's crazy that a dance move or doing something like that can educate somebody about agriculture, but I think it really is the most modern and impactful way to do that. Thank you all for your time.
America's most inspirational figures, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Nothing in this world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance." And perhaps no industry is facing as much outside ignorance as American agriculture. A prime example of this occurred when a student at an agricultural college provided a demonstration to elementary students on how to properly milk a cow. Yet, following the presentation, the teacher accompanying the group appeared completely dumbfounded. The student walked over to her and said, "Ma'am, I can tell you have a question. Is there something I can help you with?" The teacher nervously glanced over each shoulder to make sure no one was listening, and then asked, "Okay, I now get where the milk comes out of the cow, but where do the eggs come out?" The student responded with, "Well, ma'am, what would make you think that eggs came from a cow?" The teacher explained how in the grocery store, the milk, eggs, and cheese were all in the dairy aisle, so she just assumed that they all came from a cow. However, her lack of knowledge on the subject wasn't entirely her fault. Most people in America are 2 to 3 generations removed from the farm, and therefore lack basic knowledge about the industry that feeds them. Which brings me to the topic at hand. Hi, my name is Sarah Dunn, representing the Lincoln County FFA chapter, and today I'd like to share with you some of the misconceptions the public already has about agriculture, the negative effects this ignorance has on our industry, and how we can educate the non-agricultural public. There is so much misinformation that is perpetuated from the ignorance of the average American citizen about our nation's largest and most important industry, agriculture. I think it's time that agriculturists come together to educate the public on what is and is not true about agriculture. Unfortunately, most of us have probably seen news stories, commercials, TikToks, or social media posts that falsely claim that farming is abusive to animals, that GMO crops are frankenfoods, and that all pesticides are harmful to mankind. Today, one of the most common misconceptions the public has about agriculture is that farming is the leading cause of climate change. Sure, the breakdown of organic material can result in the release of methane, which is a reason why society believes cattle are harmful to the environment. However, a quote by Alan Savory from the Savory Institute proves otherwise. He starts off by saying, instead of fearing overgrazing and taking livestock off land to rest it, most grazing land should have more livestock added, because their movement and their waste and their relentless chomping stimulate grasses to grow. He then goes on to say, when grasslands restore themselves, they sequester carbon. So increasing the density of cattle and other grazing animals not only restores the environment, it protects against climate change. If 2,500 square feet of healthy lawn produces enough oxygen for a family of 4, just imagine how much fresh oxygen is produced by 200 acres of pasture. Unfortunately, many people are unaware that agriculture improves the planet we live on, far more than it could ever harm it. Yet many in society still expect farmers to use no pesticides, no fertilizers, no fuel, no genetic engineering, emit no odors, and still provide the best and cheapest food supply on the planet, all the while getting little to nothing in return. If our society were to do away with agriculture, they would eliminate the jobs of 21 million American workers. The number of people who farm in the world has already decreased by over 50% in the last 50 years. Farmers are so overburdened already. And now, with less than 2% of Americans still farming for a living, one farmer has to manage to feed themselves and 169 others. I once saw a shirt that said, "Where would you be without agriculture?" Naked, hungry, and sober. Agriculture is the key source of food for the world's population. It can provide a sustainable livelihood for the poor, provide them with food and nutrition, and help to reduce the number of poverty-related diseases. It makes no logical sense that society would want to denigrate our industry, because without it, the effects would be disastrous. We could do so much more as agriculturists to advocate for ourselves by participating in public events and activities, making videos to share on social media, writing articles for publications, and hosting seminars and workshops to educate people about agriculture. If we don't step up, I worry that we could go from something as simple as adults still thinking that brown cows make chocolate milk, to society convincing itself that we no longer need agriculture. One of my teachers told me that she used to roll her eyes when talking about people who were ignorant about agriculture. But one day, when she tried to do that with her ag law professor, he had her take a step back. After asking what her major was, she told him that he knew it was agriculture education, He went on to say, then if it's your job to educate others about the agriculture industry, why would you make fun of someone who is simply unaware of it? To scale back this ignorance, let's answer a few questions uneducated people may have about agriculture. No, brown cows don't make chocolate milk. Cheerios are not donut seeds. And it's the chicken, not the cow, that lays the eggs. We've covered some of the misconceptions the public has about agriculture, such as cattle being a main cause of climate change, what the negative effects of agricultural ignorance are, such as a rise in poverty and less food availability, and how we can educate the public by speaking up to spread the positive impacts of ag. As a small town girl, I can only do so much by myself to promote agriculture. I desperately need your help. So I have a question for you. Next time you hear someone sharing false information about the agriculture industry, what action are you going to take? Will you stand idly by and do nothing? Or will you fight for our world's most vital industry? Thank you.
Sarah, congratulations making it to this point.
Thank you.
Talk to us about how you chose your topic and settled on this for your speech today.
Yeah, so when I decided to do prepared, at first I had no idea what I wanted to do, except there was one idea that I kept on sticking with, and I wasn't really super knowledgeable on it yet, but it's something that I wanted to look more into. And it's the fact that when I was a little girl, and I always take all the advice I can get from my dad or listen to the stories he tells. And one time I heard him say, the government's trying to take away our cows, Sarah. And I was like, what? What do you mean the government's trying to take away our cows? And then I had no idea what the real cause of it was, but now I realize that it was the methane emissions that are supposedly coming from cattle. And I really wanted to stick with this topic that surrounds that whole idea that not just that cattle are the main cause of climate change, but just all the other agricultural misconceptions that people have, because I think it is so, so sad to know that 54% of people under the age 24 have never even seen a cow in their life, much less know any facts about agriculture. They don't know where their food is coming from other than they need it 3 times a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and yet they don't even know where their food is coming from. So I'm really, really passionate about agriculture, and I knew I just wanted to have a speech that I could share with other people that would truly make them give a second thought to where their food comes from, to where their clothes come from, their shelter, and just really put into thought about how much agriculture truly means to our society, and that it is absolutely vital for our society to live.
Tell us about a time that you personally taught somebody about a misconception in agriculture.
Okay. So something that I'm really proud of that I'm able to do is for my SAE, I go on the radio station every single month and just talk about our FFA chapter or talk about things happening in the agriculture industry. And this started because I really wanted to do something unique that I'd never really heard of before. So we got in touch with our local radio producer, Tim Estes, and asked him if I could come on just one time and see how it goes. And it went great, and they were all saying, take Sarah back, let her come back again and speak. So it turned into an every single month thing, and I now go on every single month for my SAE. So with this, I cover a whole bunch of different topics, including anything just from what our FFA chapter is doing, the activities, who the new officers are, all the way to agricultural misconceptions or what our events are and what agriculture truly means. So something that I'm able to do is I actually have a recording of the creed that comes on every single time I go on to the radio station. So that's one thing that the public is able to hear and kind of help them take a second thought about what agriculture truly is. But also I've had the chance to talk about my speech that I just gave to you today and share it with the public on the radio, and to just kind of go over all those agricultural facts. And not only was that able to go to everybody who is listening in at the moment, but also our radio producer decided to turn my radio sessions into a podcast. So that means that anybody who wants to can look it up and find it on the radio station as a podcast and listen to it, and it's just going to have the domino effect when people listen to it, and it's just going to spread that word of agriculture and what the true meaning behind it is. Thank you.